The next level you. Here is a little background before I get to the questions I have for you guys. My wife and I have been married for 12 years and have 4 kids. We met and married right out of high school and were each other's first loves. My wife growing up was a straight-laced girl and could be considered a goody-goody. She always got super good grades and was very responsible. Because of this, I have always believed and trusted everything she says. I could not even imagine her lying to me. She has the type of personality that she is not afraid to tell you exactly what she is thinking. She can be very blunt, which is one of the things I have always admired about her. I have always trusted her for that reason. Well, a couple years after getting married, she got a part-time job at a telemarketing place, and not long after starting there, she said there was a guy there that kept giving her all these compliments and telling her how gorgeous she is. I told her that he was no good and she should avoid him at all cost. Well, a few weeks after this, she is late getting home from work, and her work is only a couple miles away from our home, so I decided to drive over there to make sure her car is there. This was before we had cell phones, and I had no way to get a hold of her at work. Anyway, I pull into the parking lot and park by her car. After about 30 minutes, she comes pulling into the parking lot in the passenger side of the guy's car that she told me was paying her compliments. There was another girl with them in the back seat, and the look on her face was total shock. So, she proceeds to tell me every excuse in the book. She said they ran out of work, and their boss let them off early, and that guy and the other girl invited her to go get something to eat. She said it was completely innocent, and she didn't think I would get that upset. So, she tells me that she won't talk to the guy anymore, and a month or so later, I find out that she was meeting him at a grocery store parking lot, and he would get in her car, and they would talk. She said this happened twice, and that nothing physical happened. Anyway, this was a huge blow to me. I felt unwanted and worthless as a husband. I just couldn't believe that my wife thought this would be okay to do. She said she trusted herself, that nothing would happen, and didn't think it was that big of a deal. She ended up getting another job, and I never heard anything about that guy again. This was over 10 years ago, and we moved on, and I chalked it up as a mistake and a moment of weakness on her part. At the time we had 1 daughter, and now we have 3 more kids. So, fast forward to summer of 2018. I felt like something was off in our marriage, and was feeling lonely even when I was with my wife. I started to get suspicious and decided to check our phone bill. I get on our account, and there is a particular number that is showing up on there all the time that I don't recognize. Alarm bells are going off in my head at this point, and I think to myself, maybe it is one of her female coworkers. So, I decide to call the number to see who answers. I call, and a man answers, and my heart sinks. I told the guy that I had the wrong number, and then called my wife and demanded to know whose number that was. She said it was a guy she worked with, and that he is just a friend. I started digging through the history, and there was over 1,000 texts between them over a 2-month period. Of course, she had been deleting all of the texts. I was devastated, mostly over the deceitfulness and the hiding stuff from me. It brought back the rush of memories from the incident over 10 years ago, only times 10. So, after some craftiness on my part, telling her that I bought some software that could read her last 5,000 texts, and that she had one last chance to come clean before I read everything that was said, she starts telling me all the details, and I really feel like she told me everything she could. I will never believe that I know everything, but because of certain things she said, and the timeline, I was sure that it didn't get physical. From some of the last conversations they had, it was very close to becoming such, as he was making his intentions clear. So, after this discovery, my wife was very remorseful, and said how sorry she was, and that she didn't think it was a big deal, and that she didn't mean to hurt me. I was so angry the first day that I came home and was looking up divorce attorneys. She begged and pleaded for me to give her another chance, and after a few days, I told her that I would be willing to try again, but only under new conditions. I told her that she had to change jobs, so she wasn't working directly with him, which she did. She now works in a completely different building, although it is the same company. She has not even seen him for the last 8 months, so I am very certain the E is completely over. So, this brings me to my actual questions. In the wake of what's happened, how do I move forward? I can never fully trust her again, and I will always have this feeling that she wants someone else. I can't stop thinking about the affair. I think about it every day. How do I get to a place where I feel safe again? It just feels like the foundation of our marriage is cracked and crumbling, and I am trying to figure out how to rebuild it, or at least repair it. She is frustrated with me because she thinks I should be over it by now. One of the things that still kills me is if I ever bring it up, she will say it wasn't a big deal, and he was just a friend. I told her I can't stand it when she says he was just a friend. She says I have just blown everything way out of proportion, and what she did is not that big of a deal. So, do you guys think I am crazy? Would you be upset in my circumstance? So just to clarify, in order to avoid writing a book, there are many details I had to leave out here. We have hashed over the whys over and over. I owned up to the things I was doing wrong, and not meeting all of her emotional needs. We went to a marriage counselor for about 5 months, and had some very good breakthrough conversations. And quite honestly, there are days when I feel like everything is great, but I just can't seem to get over it. It is always there, and I don't know if we will ever get back to the level of trust I had before. In fact, I am coming to the realization that it is impossible to ever get back to that, so I would just settle for good enough. I want to feel safe and happy again. So, just to clarify, I was totally bluffing when I told her I was going to be able to read the last 5,000 texts on her phone. I had already looked into it, and the basic phone she was using was impossible to recover deleted texts from. I even called Verizon asking if there was any way to get them. The reason I feel like I got most of the information is because when I told her that, she got that deer in the headlights look and started rattling off all sorts of stuff that she was worried I might read. But you guys are right that I will never really truly know, and that eats me up inside. The only thing I have to go off of at this point is the complete 180 she has done since then as far as our relationship. She is so much more attentive to my needs. I don't feel like I am being deceived anymore, and I don't have that lonely feeling I once had. I truly think she wants to fix what she has done. Now there is the issue of how much time has passed. It has been 10 months since the texting was going on. Believe me, I would really like to know what was said in those texts, so I could be the judge of her character without her watered-down version. Hindsight is 20/20, but if I could go back, I would have kept my mouth shut and hooked up the online texting app for her number. I ended up doing this later in the summer, and all of her texts would come right to my iPad. I never found anything out of the ordinary at this point, but I sure wish I could go back in time and watch the conversations play out. But the reality right now is I am just stuck with assumptions and half-truths. I agree that I have no way of knowing for sure that they are not emailing each other. She loves the job and doesn't want to quit. I would like to try a VAR, and her purse at work would be key to that. Also, under the front seat of her car, I believe that nothing is going on. Back at the end of the summer, I emailed the guy's boss and told his boss all of the things he had said to my wife, and that it was a harassment lawsuit just waiting to happen. His boss called my wife and asked if it was true that he said all these things, and she told him that it was true. His boss was very upset and took the issue to HR. The OM was actually the one that moved to another building, and my wife was also transferred to a new area. From talking to one of my wife's friends that works with her, she said the guy was pissed that she said anything to the boss, and when my wife tried to say hi to him before he transferred, he completely ignored her. I am only saying this because I honestly believe that the IA has ended. I am fully aware that it wouldn't take much at all to start back up, hence my concerns about her work email, but right now I don't think anything is going on. Right now, my wife is doing everything right, and she seems very genuine in wanting to recover. I will do everything I can to be the best husband and father, but I will be on full alert and put things in place like VAR and GPS and do any kind of snooping I can think of. If she ever slips up again, I will consider it strike 3 and will go straight for divorce. I don't want to spend the rest of my life worrying whether or not I can trust her. Right now, it is the hand I have been dealt. I love my wife with all my heart. I will just have to continue snooping until after years of turning up nothing, I begin to trust her again. On the flip side, knowing what I know now, if anything were to start up, I would not reveal anything until I had the whole truth, and then I would bring down the hammer. If there is ever a next time, it would be a deal breaker for sure. Okay, I was out of town for a few days, but I was able to read through everyone's comments. It seems like the overall consensus is that this has all been rug swept, and my wife knows that she can just get away with it in the future. All I can say is that I don't think she feels this way. Our marriage has been to hell and back over the last 9 months. When I found out about the texting, I exposed to everyone including her family and my family, and even exposed at her work, and like I said in an earlier post, they were both transferred because of the things he said to her. She knows that if this were to ever happen again, that it would be over for us. I made the mistake the other day of telling her that a couple months ago, I filled out a divorce application with all of our assets and child information, and that I was planning on seeing a divorce attorney that Friday, but then I had second thoughts and didn't go through with it. I never should have told her about that, but I was just going through a really hard time. I quoted this particular post above because I fully agree that I need to go forward improving myself to the best of my ability. I am in good shape, and I am an athlete, but I will take it up a couple notches and get back into peak condition. I will do everything I can to better myself and show her that I do not need her. I will never know for sure if anything physical happened, but I can go forward with a mindset of strike 3 and you are out. I just need to somehow be clear on what boundaries she should have in place and let her know that I will not tolerate any sort of breach of trust in the future. I cannot stand being lied to, and I won't put up with it anymore. So, in the past I have struggled with videos from time to time, where I will do really good for a few months, and then I will mess up and view it. For example, last April I messed up, and also in the November. Anyways, talking to my wife the other night, she mentioned that maybe I pushed her to have emotional affairs because of my actions. She then said that she thinks that videos is worse than what she did to me. What do I say to that? What do you guys think? Is it worse? So where do I go from here? What if her 2 emotional affairs were never physical? She has said on occasion that someday I will realize that nothing went on, and I will feel like an ass for the way I have overreacted. She is not truly remorseful. I have never felt like she is really sorry for what happened. The feeling I get is more along the lines of she feels sorry that I found out, and she is sorry that it hurt me, but not that she is sorry for what she did. To her it was all in good fun, but to me it has broken and destroyed me. Both of the OM were single. The first OM was in his early 20s, and that was early in our marriage. Now my wife and I are in our 30s, and the second OM is around 40 and never been married. In fact, he is rumored to be a player. A friend of mine has a sister that works there, and he asked her about this guy, and her immediate response was that he was a huge flirt and a player. One thing that always bothered me was after D-Day, she told me about how he would always tell her how beautiful she was. I said, "I tell you how beautiful you are every day," and her response was that it was different when he said it. She said, "You have to say it, because you are married to me." Also, last night she informed me that she never had an affair. She said what she did was not appropriate, but it was in no way an affair of any kind. I said what I have gone through over the last 9 months has been devastating, and mentally I have gone through the pains of a full-on physical affair. Her response was that it is my fault because I have a big imagination. I have just imagined that anything more than what she told me happened. I informed her that what hurt more than anything was the feelings of betrayal and deceit. I am going to remain vigilant and snooping and watching everything I can. Like I mentioned earlier, I am applying the 3-strike rule, and if she does anything like this again, then I am done. I do love her with all my heart. We have a great physical life and a beautiful family. I just cannot live the rest of my life wondering if she is faithful. I have suffered more than I thought possible over this. I get how foolish this must sound, but with both incidents, I have zero proof that anything physical occurred. I said the 3-strike thing because I have laid out very clear boundaries that she is to have with opposite gender coworkers and men in general. She has agreed to complete transparency, and I have access to her phone and emails. She was able to play the "I didn't know that you would be upset" card already. Now she clearly knows where the line is, and if she crosses it, by starting any kind of friendship with someone of the OS, whether it is phone calls, texting, emails, or any other means, then I am through. This has been made very clear. Some might think that I am controlling, but because of the past incidents, this is the precautions she must be willing to take to protect us from this happening again. The other reason I am going this route is because right now everything is great. She is a great mother to our children. She is a very loving, caring wife, and we have a great physical life, an average 3 to 4 times a week. She meets all of my emotional and physical needs. That being said, after working mentally through this situation, I have come to the reality that I would be just fine without her. If she ever chooses to betray my trust, then I will walk away from our marriage guilt-free, because I have tried to do everything possible to keep things together. I also still love her very much and am willing to give her a final chance to show that she is willing to make personal sacrifices to prove to me that she values our marriage. So, I started the book No Nicer Guy, and I can relate with a lot of the attributes of a nice guy. I am realizing that I need to work on myself. I don't have a lot of time to read because of all the overtime I have been putting in at work, but I am going to try and fit in what I can on a daily basis. How should I continue to approach my wife in regard to our situation? Should I just shut up and never bring up her EA? I know it never turns out good if and when I bring up details or things that are bothering me. I have been triggered quite often lately because I know a lot of actual days last year that she was contacting the OM heavily. For example, when looking back at text records, April 27th of 2018, she texted him like 90 times in one evening while she was working. So yesterday I kept on thinking about things. Those specific dates really bother me, and sometimes my wife will notice that I am not myself. Should I tell her that I am triggered, or just keep it to myself? 8 months later, an update of where I am at and get some advice on where to go from here. Over the last 8 months we have had our ups and downs, but things have really seemed to stabilize. I am starting to feel like my old self, and I feel more secure in our marriage. Yesterday I found out that a friend of mine is getting a divorce because his wife cheated, and while discussing this situation with a coworker, I was informed by my coworker that a few years back his wife had an emotional affair with her boss, and that he still wasn't over it, and that they had almost got divorced. Anyway, the reason I bring this up is because after hearing of these 2 examples, my soul was very weighed down, and my heart was aching. Last night before we went to bed, I told my wife of the 2 situations, and how sad I was. Here is the email she sent me from work this morning. I love you more than life. I'm sorry for all the pain I caused you. I can't go back. I can love you with all my heart and be honest and loyal to you. I can just move forward. You are my whole world. You are what gives my life meaning. I am sorry for all the sad stories that have been coming your way, and my heart aches for those people involved. I'm glad we have each other. I love you, and I hope you can have a great day. Lately she has been so much more loving and understanding when we discuss this type of stuff. She used to get instantly defensive if we talked about someone who had an affair or anything of that nature. Now she understands that I am not attacking her or comparing her, but that I just want to understand how these things happen and how to avoid trouble in the future. Because of this, she is actually able to talk to me without it becoming a fight. Overall, right now I feel very good about where we are at, and I feel like we are actually recovering and moving forward. So, I was wondering if I should ask her to read the book Not Just Friends by Shirley Glass. A year ago, she would have been defensive and would probably think I was trying to rub things in her face. I think now that she would be more open to it. Is this a good idea? I want to get it to read for myself either way, but just was unsure how to approach her on the subject without coming across wrong. So, is she still at the same job? Yes, but he was transferred to another facility after the fuss and commotion I caused, and my wife was transferred to another department. So, they don't work anywhere near each other, and my wife works with completely different people. This company employs more than 90,000 employees, so they hopefully will never cross paths again. She worked with him over 12 years ago, and we have since moved far away from that place. I actually hadn't thought about that situation for years until the latest situation happened. Then everything came rushing back. Overall, I really do feel like she has come a long way in the last 2 years. She seems to recognize that what she did was wrong, and she seems very sorry and sincere now. It doesn't feel like she is just sorry that she got caught. It seems like she sees now how truly hurtful her actions were to our marriage, and I feel her sincere desire to fix things. 2 years ago, when this whole mess started, she threw a tizzy fit when I mentioned that I was not comfortable with her talking to her boss at work, and that they should never talk about anything personal. She acted like I was a jealous, controlling jerk, and that I had no right to disapprove of her having a friend. When we talk about friends of the opposite gender now, she says that she understands now why it is such a bad idea, and she understands how important boundaries are. She has matured a lot in this area. Bottom line is that I actually am starting to feel a sense of security and feel like she is fully invested in our marriage. I am going to do as suggested by someone and invite her to read Not Just Friends with me, as a learning tool, how we can affair-proof our marriage. We are about 18 months into recovery, and I really do believe when people on here say that it will take 2 to 5 years. I am starting to see a ray of hope that if we continue on this path, we can be fully recovered, but I am still not naive enough to think we are home free. Our marriage now is on a brittle foundation that will take years to fully solidify. Update on my situation. Almost a year later, a lot has happened since the last time I wrote. Back in December I mentioned my wife and I reading the book Not Just Friends. We did that, and then we read the book as needs her needs. We had some great discussions after reading these 2 books, and I felt that we were really making some progress. Then I went and did something really stupid. I had an affair. At my work we have an IT department that helps us with computer issues, and one day there was a girl who helped me with my laptop. Afterwards I emailed her thanking her for being so nice, and I told her that she seemed like a really cool person. From there we really hit it off, and you can only guess what happened. To make a long story short, we began emailing on pretty much a daily basis, and got into details of our personal lives, including me telling her about my wife's past emotional affairs. After a couple weeks I asked her to send me a picture, because I had no idea what she looked like. She sent me a picture, and I told her that she was very pretty, and then I sent her a picture of myself. Then we talked about meeting each other in person. We both agreed that it probably wouldn't be a good idea since we were already attracted to each other. At this point I was aware that what I was doing was not right, and that I should stop. I began to justify things in my mind and shift things in my mind back on my wife. I began to be very angry towards her for the emotional affair that she had with her boss. Ironic, I know, right? So, a little time had passed that we had said that we should never meet in person, and on the 24th of February, I was having a particularly terrible day, because it was that day 2 years ago that my wife began texting her boss. So, I emailed this and asked her if we could meet in person. I told her that I was having a bad day, and that I would really like to meet her. So, I drove to her work, which is about 4 miles from my work. The company I work for contracts out their IT service, so she works at another facility. We met for only about 5 minutes. I sat in my car, and she stayed outside. I actually invited her to sit in my car, but she said that wouldn't be a good idea. We ended up meeting another time like this, and then nothing for a couple weeks. Then one day I told her that I would like to meet her away from her work. We ended up meeting at a Walmart parking lot for about 10 minutes, and at the end of our conversation I hugged her and smelled her neck. Afterwards we pretty much expressed to each other that we were very attracted to each other, and that we needed to be very careful. At this point we began texting each other. The next week I wanted to meet her again, but she couldn't, so I asked her if she would send me another picture, but this time a little lower. She ended up sending me a picture of her breasts. Things began to escalate after this, and we began having conversations about how we needed to stop because we didn't want our families to get hurt. I ended up going to her office after work one day and sitting next to her at her desk. She took a service call, and while she was on the phone, I started teasing her by rubbing her legs, and then I kissed the back of her neck. After this I left her office. The day after this meeting, through text messages I asked her what she thought about me kissing her on the mouth. She told me that it wouldn't be a good idea because we were already way too emotionally involved. I agreed to back off a bit but told her I still wanted to come see her again at her office. I went there after work again, but this time I kept my hands to myself, and we just talked for about 20 minutes. When I left her office, on the drive home, I felt really horrible. I felt extremely guilty for getting myself in this mess. I felt like such a hypocrite because of how hurt I had been in the past by my wife. So, I made a resolve in my mind that evening that I was going to end things with her. I remember thinking that evening about whether or not I should tell my wife. I was too afraid of the hurt that would cause her, so I just shut it out of my mind. I went to bed that night feeling very troubled and confused. Next thing I know, my wife is shaking me awake and asking me what was on my phone. She started reading some of the texts between us. She read some of the stuff about me being so tempted to kiss her. I woke up in complete panic. I took the phone out of her hands and immediately started deleting texts. It didn't matter because the cat was out of the bag. She was crying and shaking. It was a very long, ugly night. It felt like a bad dream. I felt so horrible for letting things get that far. I told my wife that I was going to end it and that I would not contact her again. Well, the next day I told Theo what was going on. My wife asked if I contacted her at all, and I lied and said no. That weekend we drafted a no-contact email and sent it to her. A few days after that, my wife kept asking me if I had warned her or contacted her at all before we sent the no-contact email. I felt so guilty for lying to her, and so this time I told her the truth, and she was devastated. After this, I decided that if I really wanted to fix this, then I needed to tell my wife everything. I sent her all the email exchanges between myself and Theo. I had deleted the text messages, but I filled her in on every detail I could possibly think of, even the stuff that I knew would hurt her the most. I told her everything, including the breast picture she sent me, which she never would have known about. I just wanted to get everything out there and give us a chance at rebuilding. It has been about 8 weeks since D-Day. I have not contacted Theo at all. My wife ended up calling Theo at her office the next week and talking to her for about 20 minutes. There has been a lot of tears shed from both of us. I know it may seem like I did this to get her back for her past emotional affairs, but that is not the case. I didn't do it to intentionally hurt my wife. I feel like I let down my boundaries because of my wife's lack of boundaries. In the past, there is no way that I would have emailed another female in a casual manner like that, but in my mind I kind of thought, why should I be so careful if she's not? And that is where I started down the slippery slope of infidelity. Looking back now, I wonder what I was even thinking, because I see that I really didn't even like Theo that much, but I made up some fantasy in my head that built her up to be something that she wasn't. For example, she is not near as pretty as my wife. My wife is absolutely beautiful. It is almost like I was using her to feel wanted in a way. Ever since my wife had her first affair, I felt like she didn't really want me. It didn't matter who this O was. It was just the feeling of being wanted again that made me feel like $1,000,000. I feel really bad about that, and I have no desire to ever contact Theo again. So, where are we now 8 weeks later? We have good days and bad days. We have discovered that we can't bring up the affairs at all, because it always ends up with us comparing. If I bring up some of the stuff that happened with her boss or the other guy, she gets really upset and starts telling me that my situation was so much worse, and then I start bringing up reasons why I think her affairs were so much worse. Anyway, we have decided that we just cannot talk about certain things. We have become very close over the last 8 weeks. We have been going through what I have heard on this site is called hysterical bonding. She wants to sleep with me all the time. The first couple weeks she kept saying, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I just want to sleep together all the time. Bottom line is I was very selfish and stupid. I am very sorry for what I did. I feel horrible and I want to make things right. I just thought I would throw this update out there to let everyone know where my situation is. I have no excuses. I knew that it was wrong from the beginning, and I am extremely sorry for what I did. One thing that I am very grateful for is that my wife discovered those texts on my phone when she did, because I was on a destructive path, and if I would have continued down that road, who knows where I would have ended up. As it still stands, my wife is the only woman I have ever had slept with, so at least we have that to build on as we start our path to recovery. Like comment, you two need some professional help. You should be an IC, in my opinion. You don't trust each other, why would you? And don't seem to have any real direction on how to build the trust in your marriage again. It hasn't been there for you for many years, and instead of trying to work on that for yourself, you leveled the untrustworthy playing field. I hope you get some help.